Hello, clever people, and welcome to my review of the Iron Man trilogy. So leading up to Avengers Endgame, I am planning on reviewing every single Marvel movie, but reviewing them in a non-traditional pattern. Rather than reviewing them in chronological order, I'm going to watch each collection of films. So I'm starting off with the Iron Man trilogy. I'll next do the Thor trilogy, then the Captain America trilogy, then I'll get on to like the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the 2 Ant-Man movies, and then I'll get all of the solo films, and I will do a review of the trilogy of Avengers films that we have so far, all leading up to Avengers Endgame on April 26th. So for the meantime, I'm going to be talking about 3 movies: Iron Man, Iron Man 2, and surprisingly enough, Iron Man 3. So we'll start off with Iron Man. This movie came out in 2008. It was directed by Jon Favreau, and it followed the story of Tony Stark, who was a multi-billion-dollar man. He had tons of money because he inherited an organization from his dad that was focused on making missiles and making weapons for people. But after going to, I think it was Iraq, or it was one of the countries, one of the Middle Eastern countries, he gets kidnapped and he has to escape. And afterwards, he starts questioning whether or not his company should be making weapons. Iron Man was kind of the movie that started it all. If this movie was a failure, if it didn't make good money, and if it wasn't successful with critics, we would not have an MCU right now. Superhero movies probably wouldn't be as big as they are right now if it wasn't for Iron Man being as good as it was. And I hadn't seen Iron Man in a long time. It's a sentimental movie to me because it was my first PG-13 movie I had ever seen. I got to see it in theaters, and I was in awe at the movie at the time. I think I was 5 years old, but I remember seeing it, and I remember being blown away by it. And it feels kind of like a really good animated movie to me. And what I mean by that is that the best animated movies, the Pixar movies, you'll watch them as a kid, you'll enjoy them, but when you grow up, you'll see the deeper themes that are represented in the movie. And while Iron Man isn't necessarily a kid's movie, when I watched it as a kid, I thought, ooh, action, ooh, colors. But when I grew up, I got to see a lot of the deeper themes in this movie, and surprisingly enough, this movie is pretty psychological. It asks a lot of questions about violence and about weapons and about how we should use them. And honestly, I am shocked that a superhero movie back in 2008 could ask those questions. A superhero movie in 2019, no doubt, we had Logan that was rated R that asked a lot of questions about mortality, about life and death. And we've had a bunch of very psychological superhero movies since then, but back in 2008, superhero movies weren't big yet. And the fact that a superhero movie got to deal with such serious subject matter and play it off so well, that is why the MCU worked. But it's not just the subject matter that makes this movie good. It's directed well, it's written well, it's paced extremely well, it flies by, and it is honestly one of the most entertaining movies out of the MCU. I was never in shock at how good Iron Man was, like a lot of other people. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 MCU films, but after rewatching it, I absolutely would. This is a great movie. It is one of the best MCU movies, and I am so glad that I got to revisit it. I will give Iron Man a 7.75 out of 10. Alright, now we are on to Iron Man 2. So, Iron Man 2 came out 2 years after the first Iron Man, came out in 2010, and it follows the story of Tony Stark again, basically in the same position as he was. He just wasn't as focused on missiles, but there is another threat to him from a foreign land. It kind of just feels like the first Iron Man, very similar in plot. It's about terrorism, and it's about weapons. I don't know. Iron Man 2 is not a movie I like a whole lot. I didn't even like it when I first initially saw it. I thought it was kind of boring as a 7-year-old when I saw it. I don't think that Iron Man 2 holds up even. I think honestly it holds up way worse than the first Iron Man, mostly because this movie lost what the first Iron Man had. What the first Iron Man had was a snarky personality and some deeper messages and themes in it. This movie thinks, oh, the reason people like the first Iron Man was because of the snarky personality. Yes, that's a reason, but the other reason is how well paced it was, how intellectual it was, and how many ideas were in it. Iron Man 2 has none of that. It just has snarky personality, and unfortunately, it doesn't last long enough to keep the movie up. I got bored with Iron Man 2. I kept on checking my phone. I just wanted it to be over very badly, and it's not a good sign when a movie does that. I don't have a whole lot else to say about this movie. I just think that it was a disappointment. I will give Iron Man 2 a 5 out of 10. Alright, next up is my review for Iron Man 3. So, just like the first two, Iron Man 3 deals with a terrorist who is targeting Tony Stark, and he has to deal with it. That's basically the plot of all three movies. In the first one, he's kidnapped by terrorists, he deals with it, he learns he doesn't like weapons. The second one, there's another terrorist that tries to attack him, he has to deal with it. Third one, it's the same thing. I don't know if that was intentional, that all three were supposed to be kind of commenting on terrorism. I don't know. Anyways, Iron Man 3 is a movie that I liked a lot when I was younger. I saw it when I was about 10, so all three movies I kind of grew up with. And the third one coming out in 2013, I was excited to see it, and it wasn't great. It's good, though. I would say it's a step up from Iron Man 2. It was an okay way to end the Iron Man trilogy. It's nowhere close to the first one. It doesn't have smart ideas, even though he does try to implement some smart ideas about PTSD and also about weapon use. I don't think that they resonated as well as the first Iron Man just because the pacing isn't as good. Iron Man 3 feels very choppy. It's all over the place. There's a lot of different ideas going on, and unfortunately they don't all meld well together. I think that what's interesting about this movie is that over time, you got to see Tony Stark change. And the reason Iron Man 2 didn't work is that Tony Stark didn't change at all. He was the first character that he was in the first movie. It's almost like his arc in the first movie didn't even matter in the second one. The third one, he's a new man. You've had his arc in the first one. You've had his arc in Avengers. You are towards the end of his story, and you can tell, but they ended off pretty well. I don't think that it's a great movie, but it's a step up from Iron Man 2, and I will give Iron Man 3 a 6.25 out of 10. Alright, that concludes my review for the Iron Man trilogy. So, what are your thoughts on this trilogy, and how would you rank them? Comment in the comment section below, and let me know. I'm Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.